In this video, I want to talk to you about how I practice Jiu Jitsu. I've been teaching basically since I've started Jiu Jitsu. In all honesty, there just weren't many gyms around, so I was forced to kind of be my own coach. And what that meant is I didn't get a lot of time to drill. I was always either teaching. If I wasn't teaching, then the only other opportunities I'd have is specific training and sparring. So what I started doing is being very specific when I'm rolling with people. In terms of what I'm trying to do, rather than just spar for the sake of sparring, I have specific goals when I go into rolling, and I want to show you this video of how I do that. Okay, now I'm going to preface this by saying there's certain things that you don't. It depends on the style of training you're doing, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're on top, you want to stay on top until you pass or take the back. Okay. Because I'm being specific, I will give up top position in this. And the other thing is I will let Steve get into positions. Steve's the guy I'm going to be training with. I'll let Steve get into positions that I wouldn't necessarily if I wasn't doing this style of specific training. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into the video. Steve is this chap as a brown belt. So you can see first thing, I'm super low down. Steve grabbed my head. This is not a good guard pull. This is not how you should pull guard at all. I have no grip. So immediately I stand back up and I just jump forwards into the grip here. And then I can pull from that point onwards. Okay, now I'm using this kind of staggered position. Let me go back a little bit further. You can see when I stand up, I grip. And then I drop. I wanted to play guard, and I thought Steve might pull guard, so I tried to get there as fast as possible. Got my hand planted, knee connected to my elbow. I'm in an okay position, but I'm also to the outside of Steve. Okay, now very quickly, the second that Steve comes into range here and starts to pass, I'm going to bring my legs up. Okay, now, what I'm trying to work in this series is wrestling up from the bottom, utilizing the Brazilian dental floss. Okay, and there's some specific entries and stuff that I was trying to get to work as well. But we'll see what happens. Steve does a good job of stuffing that out. Throughout this roll, actually, Steve was grabbing my toes really, really well and then just using them to push inside. I think at this point, what I've done is set up the first lapel grip. And I'm being quite specific about it. I wanted Steve to get deep into positions here. You can see that I've got this this lapel nicely tied up, but Steve's actually stuffed it underneath my body, not really where I want to be, and he's starting to work around towards this side. Yeah, this is actually the best way to go if your partner is playing a lot of lapel guard, is going towards the lasso rather than away from it. Okay, so he grabs the collar, I'm forced to bail, and then I try a fancy inversion to see what happens. Again, I'm just trying to hold on to this lapel. I actually end up in a bit of a weird position here because my foot is tied up in Steve's belt, which not ideal. And I have to kind of unwind, look at it, and free up my foot. Now I'm starting to get to the dental floss position. Or I was, but I think I had to unfree my foot, and I go back to it from here. This is a position that's called ringworm guard, so I have the lapel fed through here, the foot up on the hip, and the other leg inside. And it's a great position to start wrestling up from. What I'm looking to do now is create space with my foot next to go shin on shin and start elevating from there. So you can see I get to it and I lift Steve up. That's the first point of this. I want to get his weight up on top of me. And then what I'm going to do is rechamber it, pull him back in towards me and start wrestling out. And then I get the sweep from there. Okay, the reason that I go this way rather than bowling Steve over, so you'll see I'll pull Steve, I'll go, this is the Brazilian dental floss that we're using. I go shin on shin, I pull Steve on top of me, then I expand out. And now because Steve is up in this kind of weird combat base position, I don't want to go this side because he can post his hand on the ground. So I turn in the opposite way and put his butt down where he's got no way to post. And I immediately start stepping over the leg. And I still have this lapel because I can use it to try and pin his legs and do other things. There it serves no purpose. I hip in and go to this Kimura trap. There's a whole video on Escapology online about countering the stiff arm, which is what Steve does. So you can see when I come up on top, Steve's got his hand right here, which is stopping me passing a little bit. So I hip forwards and immediately change it to a Kimura. Even though he's got this grip on my sleeve, I'm going to try to punch through. And then I can break the grip and I transition to the back and immediately start going to the chair sit. This is a little bit lazy. I was working on some back attack stuff as well. So I've gone wrong side down. I still have that Kimura grip. And then at this point, I thought about trying some weird armbar variation where I'm blocking Steve's far hand here and I have an underhook on this side so he can't defend effectively and I'm going to use my head to press it to the ground. The issue is I didn't do a good job and Steve manages to spin out. and then I let Steve turn around. That's one of those points that I wouldn't necessarily happen if it was like more of a competition-based round or I was working my A game. So immediately I grab that lapel as we come up, and I'm starting to set up the like traditional kind of lapel positions. Steve's doing a good job. Like, he's going around to the side. It's okay to go to there. And now I'm going to use this spider guard grip to break, or to attempt to break Steve's grip. Because I couldn't do that, I switched up to the lapel here, to this collar. And then I'm going to circle my foot back in, and then I've gone lasso. So I now have a lapel tied up on one side, I've got the foot on the shoulder, and I'm going back stepping on the hips. Like, at that point right here, my leg's quite high, so if Steve wanted to try and go underneath and underpass, he could. So I switch back foot to the hip. And again, he's got his, I think he's got his, he's going to try and step over this. And he does a good job of stuffing that leg underneath. I would say that he's too much down on his knees, so it's not going to be great. And we saw in a little while ago, Steve passed around to this side, so I'm really preventing it and keeping that stiff arm. And I freed up my foot, which is one of the things that I needed to accomplish. I'm now going De La Riva, and I've got this loose, I don't actually even have the foot in the lapel, but I do have this sleeve grip. So what I'm trying to do is off balance and then set up that Brazilian dental floss. My foot's the wrong way around, should be the other way around, but Steve kind of jumps on top of me. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to just use the momentum to come up on top. So I sat back down to the ground, and then I invert towards Steve's hips. You can see I'm staying nice and tight. I think I might still have this lapel, so I'm utilizing this lapel. I'm beating down with this leg, and I'm trying to reach to that far hip. Steve's blocking it, so I just transition up on top. It's one of the nice things about the berimbolo, is it always gives up the sweep or the back. Here, this is a really nice little bit of footwork. When I come up on top, Steve, you can see Steve's putting this butterfly hook in here. Okay, I step over towards the side. So actually I pull him away from the wall is the first thing, and we're here. So he still has kind of a butterfly hook. So I'm going to underhook it, which ties up both of his legs, and then windshield wiper my foot out and then put him flat using the same position. Then I transition to knee on belly straight away, and I let Steve recover guard and sit down. I was having real issues with my belt in this class. It just kept falling off for some reason and getting tied up in people. So another thing that I'm doing here is I'm not being too specific about, like, when Steve's coming up on top, establishing grip straight away. I'm just falling to my back because I want to work and get comfortable in this open guard position. So I'm pulling my knees back to my chest. I sit up, which isn't necessarily the best thing to do, but because Steve's weight's quite far back, I can do that. See, he's kind of like kneeling down. I know he's not going to move very, very fast. So when he stands up, I use that time to step forwards, grab the lapel, and then I start working. And here I'm just using like basic kind of lapel control. I've weaved this foot into the lapel, which is kind of like a temporary grip. It makes it hard for Steve to push down, but easy for me to control, and I'm not too tied in. Now I'm going to go to the other sleeve if I can. I go to the same side collar because I can't get that sleeve, and what I'm doing is creating an angle away from the side that Steve can pass. So Steve, you know, potentially could pass around to this side with the grips that I've got, so I block him on the other side and he's not going to get around from there. Then I'm using that De La Riva hook. Steve immediately sits back for a knee bar, so I'm just going to keep my knee line hidden, roll and come up on top, and then Steve gives up the mount again. That's why you don't want him to dive for that kind of knee bar. I just pull Steve out of the position because I want to keep working from the bottom. Okay, so now I'm in like the lasso and the lapel control here. My next goal would be to set up the De La Riva, but Steve does a good job of pushing my toes down and extracting his elbow. Okay, and I was just trying to figure it out. I did try about pulling my leg back, but it was really hurting my toes because Steve was stepping on it. So I relinquished the lapel control and step on his bicep to try and step away to break that grip. I hook with the leg, so I'm now kind of a shin-on-shin position, and then feed immediately to this Brazilian dental floss, and this time I have the shin-on-shin already. So I'm going to pull Steve on top of me, and then I'm going to... Steve tries to back step, so I roll through. I would have tried to sweep him the similar sort of way as I did before, but because Steve back steps, here, I can see based on his kind of position, he's quite wide over this way. I see when he plants his hand, he's going to move it and lift his hips up. Okay, and I'm at this point. Now he could drop his hips towards the ground, but what I'm going to do is pull my body out to this side here. So I push off with this hand, spin on my back, and then when Steve's hips hit the ground, he's effectively in a baby bolo position, and I can invert and transition to the back again. Again, this is my belt problems that I was having. Super, super frustrating, but sometimes belts are like that. And again, I'm not too intent on going towards the back. I just want to move Steve away, so I let Steve out and I and let him have the bottom position. Now Steve goes to the lapel, and you can see I'm immediately blocking both legs so he can't circle in, using this toe grip, which is a very, very strong grip, very difficult for the person to break. They got shin on the other side. It probably would have been better for me to go around to my right, so that he can lapel lasso, but I'm able just to walk past the hips using a turiando, and I stay heavy. Steve comes up, I topspin towards his back, and establish control. And now I'm just going knee on belly, going to drive through to the mount from here. And now I let Steve come up on top, and this is one of those deep positions. I wanted Steve to come up in a position where he can put pressure on me, so I've let him get to the top half guard. I don't really have any distance control, so I now establish distance control, and then I'm working to put this lasso in and block him with that lasso. Okay, now I'm going to open out. My goal here when I did this was trying to open out this knee to create space so I could step on the lasso and then feed it through. I could have probably done this from here anyway, just by extracting my leg, but I wanted to work something a little bit more specific. There I just off-balanced Steve. Could have come up for the X-guard sweep, but instead just use it to start tying up this lapel again and blocking into this position. Now I want Steve to stand. Steve switches his legs well. I should have used that time that he stood up to extract, but I'm kind of in go slow mode at the moment. And there you see me trying to get it, and then time expires. So, as you can see in that all of those sequences, I'm quite specific about what I'm doing. I'm falling to my back, I'm letting Steve get into some good positions that I have to defend from, more kind of scrambly, and giving him opportunities to work that I then have to defend out of and go back to that dental floss position. I was trying to come up and like kind of wrestle up off the bottom, but Steve did a few things. Like he tried to continue passing, which then gave me the back a couple of times, which is the problem with the lapel tied through. It forces you into the forwards roll position. When you're in that forwards roll position, it's quite easy for me to continue towards the back. All right, so hopefully you guys found that useful, and I'll do another one of these again soon.